Listen to this. You probably recognize this. It's the chords built off the C scale, diatonic chords. Now we got one more. I ended on 6. Here's 7. Yeah, that's the diminished, in this case, half-diminished chord. Most guitar teachers start off by focusing on major and minor chords and tell students to kind of ignore that 7th chord, the diminished chord. I've been guilty of this myself. That's because we don't want to confuse our students with too much information. However, the downside of this and the tragedy is we often forget to come back at it. And that's a shame because the half-diminished chord is a guitar superpower. I'm going to show you several ways to play the half-diminished chord, and I'm going to show you how to use it to stop playing boring chord progressions. The symbol for the half-diminished chord, it's a circle with a line through it. It's also called a minor 7 flat 5. Now that name kind of gives you a big clue to how it's actually constructed. We have the root, the flat 3rd, the flat 5th, and then the flat 7. So it's a minor chord with the flat 7 and that 5th flatted 1/2 step. Here are 3 common fingerings for the chord. First, I'll start with the one on the 6th string root. I've got my 2nd finger on the 5th fret of the 6th string. My 3rd and pinky next to each other on the 4th and 3rd strings, and the 1st finger is on the 2nd string, and that's the 4th fret. Next, we have a chord with the root on the 4th fret. I got my 1st finger on the 7th fret of the 4th string, and then I'm making a partial bar on the 8th fret. That's the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st strings. Got my knuckle up in the air. That's the trick to this one, and kind of buckle the 1st knuckle. And then finally, with the root on the 5th string, I use this one the most. That's the 1st finger on the 12th fret, and the 2nd finger on the 12th fret. That's the 5th string and the 3rd string. I'm doing it up here to keep it an A. And I've got my 3rd finger on the 13th fret and the pinky on the 13th fret. That's the 4th string and 2nd string. So one more time. 4th string root and 5th string root. Now, let's talk about where to use these cool chords. The most common use for them is a 2 chord. In the minor key, that's the 2 chord. And you can use it as a substitute for the 2 chord in the major key. Normally it would be minor, substitute with a minor 7 flat 5 or half-diminished chord. So here's an example. E minor 7 flat 5 to E7 to A minor. This is the key of A minor. Very common. Another use for it is as a part of a descending bass line. You'll recognize this lick. And here we have the diminished chord. That bass line is, and the chord when we get here is the half-diminished chord. I filled it out so you can hear the key that it's in. You'll notice that Jimmy Page in Stairway to Heaven was aiming at that. But instead of going to the half-diminished chord, he went to a form of D chord. Kind of changed your expectation when you first heard that, and I think helped make the song popular. Next, we have the minor plagal cadence. Is that a mouthful or what? Well, it sounds more common than the name of it. A minor plagal cadence is this chord progression. To the minor, and we've all heard that, both in church hymns and popular music. And it was made originally popular in the 1800s in church hymnals, but it's filtered into all kinds of popular music. The Beatles use this in their song In My Life in the very first few lines. It goes something like this. There are places I'll remember in my life. Here it comes. Then do 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 do. Here we go. Do 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 do. Now we could make that progression sound a little more interesting by substituting for the minor chord a half-diminished chord. So listen, with C, here's the original progression. With a half-diminished, I would substitute a D half-diminished chord. Listen. F, D half-diminished, and back to C. Kind of a nice progression, huh? And another interesting place to use it is in a minor key just before you play the sixth chord in that key. So for example, I'm in the key of C minor, and I want to go to sixth chord, to the 5 chord, which gets me back to C minor. Now, to make this more interesting, just before we hit that sixth chord, I'm going to go with a half-diminished chord. So listen to this. C minor, 1 chord, half-diminished chord, to the 6th, and to the 5. Oh, this sounds a little more interesting. Listen. I think that made it a little more exciting. To complete this lesson, it'd be a good idea to watch this next video about diminished chords. Thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate your time and your attention. Bye for now.